So I'm ready, go ahead. So I demonstrated yesterday, right, applying this image to your rubber or whatever we want to call it, our relief. I went ahead and just made a second print of that so that I have a good idea of the color combinations that I want to go with. Your first step, of course, is you're cutting out all your white areas. So even though like I colored in these areas, right, I knew that I wanted to pull some of the white out of there. I was kind of following this pattern that I dropped in Photoshop on top of there. But that means that I'm gonna allow some of these that I've left to become these colors later, right? But we'll get there when we get there. So I'm pretty happy with what I've got here. First thing I'm gonna do to absolutely ensure that my block is clean, you wanna take a chip brush or maybe a stiff brush, and you wanna work it every direction you can possibly think of, because sometimes when you cut this rubber, a little bit of the dust and chaff on that stays, especially like the way I cut here. I cut kind of like in a haphazard way. So that's good. Okay, then we need to get your paper registered. You're only gonna need to create 3 prints, but like anything with printmaking, it's a really good idea for you to make multiples, just to have something to try out, or because you'll probably screw a lot of these up. That's just the way it is. So I would do maybe 2 or 3 pieces of cardstock, which is what this is. I broke out some black paper if you want to give that a shot, and this is one of the pieces of paper that I made, and I sized on both sides with some cornstarch. So I'm not sure how this is going to go. I'll probably print this last just in case it trashes my plate. The way that you're going to do this is you're going to take some painter's tape or masking tape across the top. And we need at least 2 of these pinholes, right? And so what I'm gonna do is place this inside this 3-hole punch. You could do multiples if you want. That tape just adds a little bit of extra support, because you're gonna see that these fit like very snugly inside of this. And that's what we want. We don't want a lot of moving around. So we want to ensure that we're good in terms of that fitting. You're going to see that this is not going to want to sit on here very well. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to turn these, and I'll show you how we're going to tape them down. I'm going to take a piece of tape and I'm just going to apply it like right here, and I'm going to apply one right here. And the idea is that when I slide this over like so, and I slide this one over and under, get in there, buddy. Now what I can do is I can tape these pins where I want them. And I'm just going to kind of hold that down a little bit to make sure it doesn't pull up. Now that I've got these where I want them, I'm going to secure them really well. And I've got several of these. It's probably going to be best if you just like claim one and keep it registered the same way, so that you don't have to re-register every time you want to print. I'm just going to put several pieces of tape on here. I don't want it to rock or move or anything. Okay. Got my registration board ready. Now I'm ready to go ahead and start inking up. You want to come up with like a common way that you know you're going to be arranging this, so you don't accidentally flip it around. That's really heartbreaking when you get 2 or 3 like layers on here and then you misregister one. So like if you have like landmark information on there, like I've got this really dark area here, you know, that would be a really convenient place for me to say, well, I know that's closer to this area in the corner, right? Because I know I could also look at this kind of thing. So I'm gonna go with that. When we ink these up, we wanna use very stiff ink, and I'm gonna grab some gloves. We don't wanna thin our ink down at all, because in order to get these tiny little cuts and details right, you're not taking much of that rubber away. So you don't have a lot of relief in there. So if you use thicker ink, it's gonna wanna slide into those areas, and we don't want that. We don't want it only on the surface, if at all possible. So we wanna be really picky about that inking aspect. So it's coming straight out of your can.
Wait, so the thicker ink will slide in, or the
No, thinner ink. Did I put that around? I probably did. Sometimes I think that I like modified what I said and I didn't. No, thicker ink is not going to slide into those lower areas because it's only going to want to stay on the top. So we're not going to add anything, no additives. And when I make my relief slabs, I make them really consistent and even. So you see that I really pulled that out. I don't have chunks and lumps anywhere. I want to be able to like roll out a good consistent slab. Probably should have warmed this ink up just a little bit. As you can see, it's really cool and it's not wanting to spread too much. But I also want this really stiff ink to work for me. So after you've got it stretched out, you want an up and back pull, let it spin, up and back pull, let it spin. You know you've got your brayer charged pretty well, right? Now as you're working over the surface of this, you're gonna watch it fill those areas pretty well. And you're gonna see that it's gonna take several applications to get enough ink on there. So go several directions and notice that when I'm doing this, I'm not really coming up and back, right? I'm inking, I'm moving, I'm inking, I'm moving. If you need help thinning ink, like in this case, if I don't get a very good print from this because it's so thick, I can thin it just a little bit because I can tell it's not going to slide into those little areas really at all. If you're going to make a mistake on the yellow. You don't have to use yellow. If you want to use 3 different colors, that's fine, as long as your last color is a nice dark color. So what I'm kind of gauging here is like looking at my black areas, is most of that black covered up with that yellow, right? Okay, so I decided it would go like this. Slide that up inside. We're gonna print these dry. We're gonna stick that down and we will try using a brayer at first. If we have to go with more pressure or use something else, we can use the glass insulators or some other kind of preparing. Luckily with this registration system like this, I can go ahead and check and see if I'm happy, and I'm happy. I'm good with that. So, oh, this edge maybe not enough. That's something that may be an issue, right? Because this is butted up right against the edge, you gotta make sure you hit that little spot. I didn't very much. Luckily for me, that's gonna be a very dark area, so I can be, you know, I can be a little bit more, a little less detailed about that area. So what you're gonna do, however many papers that you have created, right? You're gonna go ahead and just continue the inking process, print, 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 all the same color, right? Then, whatever you do, don't widen these out at all. Like some people like have this tendency to pin them up and put it inside of there. Like we don't want this hole to change at all. If you're gonna pin them up, I would pin them like by the bottom corners, right? Because we can trim that off later. But it's a good idea to keep them up and away so that they're not on your table and they don't get nasty, right? I'm gonna try my black one just to see if I get anything awesome out of that. We'll see, I don't know. You may have to add ink as you're going too, since we're using really stiff ink, so don't be afraid to add ink if you need.
And we can mix our own colors, right?
Totally, please feel free to. That first step is just to cut those whites out. And this rubber's awesome because like you can get a lot of detail out of these because it is so stiff. Now, of course, this cleanup is the same that we've done before. We want to razor knife as much of this ink off onto phone books, pieces of paper, throw it away, whatever. Then we're going to use, and we'll use vegetable oil, and ultimately we will use glass cleaner. Okay, some people get into the habit of like inking on here. You don't want to do that. Always make sure you're inking like on some paper away from this. We want this edge nice and clean, yeah? And I would say, whatever you find to work, like I did ultimately like 3 charges. Like I came back and charged up my brayer a total of 3 times and came back and inked up. If that works for you, keep it going, right? Keep that routine. Also, I will say this, like the velocity with your brayer, sometimes you can snap ink off of something by going too fast. So if you go super, super fast, you're not doing much. You can slow down a little bit and it's gonna apply more ink. It's gonna do it in a better manner. And again, make sure you're going multiple ways. Keep those brayers rubber side up. If you want to print on some of your old proofs that you don't like or didn't come out very well, again, feel free. I'm gonna really hit up next to this and break my brayer because I'm like such a stud. You could also use a bone folder as long as you're consistent with your stroking and marking. Oh, that looks nice. So like, that's what's cool about this, this relief ink, right? It's trying to pull up my pen. It's really opaque, so. Yeah, I'm having a tough time getting in there, probably because of all this extra relief that I put here. So there are other things I could do, like maybe put a piece of wood in here to like push it out a little bit, that kind of thing, or make a jig, but I'm gonna borrow one of these. Okay, so that's that, right? To clean these off, very easy. You want scrap paper. Somebody's old sketchbook paper, and you want to proof these off. So I just continue proofing them until I've gotten most of my ink off of there. And once I feel like I've gotten a lot of it off of there, then I'm gonna move to a blue towel and some vegetable oil. And you wanna clean this indirectly. Don't squirt this directly on here, okay? We want to try to keep this as clean as we can. So the idea is apply it to your towel, let it soak into the towel a little bit. Then you can use this to kind of get the rest of that leftover ink off as much as possible. It may stain your block just a little bit, and it may push a little ink down in those little recesses that you've cut away. So don't freak out if that happens. The last thing you want to do, the last thing I always do with these is I use soap and water to finish it off because I don't want any of that greasiness on here. I don't use a lot of hot water because I don't want to lose my toner and my Sharpie, right? So then my next step, right, is going, okay, what do I want to keep yellow? So looking at my proof here and looking at my source image, which I have that backwards. No, I don't. It goes like this. Okay.
No, I think you had it right here.
I had it right like that.
No, like the other way.
Meow. Meow. Ah, because it's offset now. Okay, so that means that I'm going to be cutting a lot of those little marks that are in here out of there because I want to keep those yellow, right, as I print my reds. I'm going to cut some of these marks through here yellow because I want the middle of that to be yellow. On the edge of this, I want some of that to be yellow. I want that tooth itself to be completely yellow. So I'm going to cut that out to a level to where I want to keep some of these marks. Then I'm gonna move on to my red, or whatever my next color is, right? And we just continue until all we have left is black. We layer one on top of the other. You can even print more than one layer in one day. The thing is, as long as this ink is mostly dry, you can go, right? And as long as we're not adding any additives like burnt plate oil into this, it shouldn't be squishy and be an issue, yeah? Cool. So that's the relief, right? 3 colors, so 1 color, 2 color, black. You wanna go beyond that, that's up to you. If you wanna use different colors, again, totally up to you. I'm just gonna keep it simple and go yellow, red, blue, black.